Hey guys, it's Danny. Today we are going to take care of my Maxillaria tenuifolia orchid, which desperately needs some help at this point. You might remember a couple of months back I told you that I'm planning to repot this orchid. I asked you if you wanted me to film and you were excited about it, and well, months passed ever since then and I didn't do anything about it. And now my orchid is super dehydrated, and I'll show you in a second why. So what I plan to do today is make my life a little easier and pot this orchid in a self-watering pot, but it's not the new pots that I purchased from Amazon, which I kept showing you lately. It is a glazed clay pot, which has a twist, and I would like to share it with you. So don't forget to give this video a like if you end up liking it, and why not subscribe? I do post quite regularly, and soon very regularly. Also, if you're interested in other orchid topics, just write in the search bar of YouTube MissOrchidGirl and the topic you're interested in. I have about 2,000 videos, and chances are I already talked about the subject you are interested in. And you guys know me, I do long and very information-packed videos. So do feel free to try the search bar thing. Alrighty, with that said, let me show you exactly what the problem is with my Maxillaria. So if you guessed it's rootless, you'd be wrong. It's actually quite jam-packed of roots. They are coming out of the drainage holes and ventilation holes. I have a lot of roots on this orchid. It cannot even sit straight. The actual problem is I cannot keep up with its watering needs. What else is new, am I right? So I have it in my typical setup of bark and sphagnum moss, and also a decorative container in which I leave a little bit of water. I actually just watered it. But typically I do leave a little bit of water, and that kind of does it for 5 days or so. And then it completely dries out yet again, and oh boy, my table is not straight. Okay, better. So I treat it just like my other orchids, but it simply isn't enough. This is a very thirsty orchid. Generally speaking, it doesn't really like to dry out way too much. And even though drying out every 5 days is really not a big deal, it's quite comfortable normally. I cannot say I have a normal collection. It's quite big. And I also cannot say I have quite a lot of time at my disposal. I sometimes slack, so all of these forces combined lead to a very dehydrated orchid. And this is the type of orchid that gets dehydrated super fast. It's not very tolerant to drought. I mean, it is. It's an epiphytic orchid, but it will look very bad if it doesn't receive the water it needs when it needs it. And sometimes when it needs water, it's not when I have time to provide it. So I do believe that the best course of action for my own sake and for its sake is to place it in a self-watering pot. It is actually time to repot it anyway. It's spent about 1.5 years in that medium. It can actually go a little longer, but hey, it's not exactly fresh medium. So what I will go for is a glazed self-watering pot, which I know looks really pretty. And this is actually a pot that Repotting sent me quite a long time ago, and I have been using it with African violets when I used to have them. But recently I experienced a little issue with it, which some of you guys pointed out as well, not necessarily with these pots, but most glazed clay self-watering pots. At some point, this clay, which is not glazed, stops being wicking. Now, if you guys know, unglazed pots are very wicking. They also transpire a lot. They're very porous. So the principle of this self-watering pot is you have water in this beautiful reservoir, then you have the unglazed pot inside, which wicks the water, and hey presto, you have water inside for your orchid. Well, in time, clay pots accumulate salts. So if you ever had anything growing in those really nice terracotta pots, you know that in time you'll have a lot of white deposits, which are very hard to remove, sometimes quite impossible to remove. And this is what I suspect happens to these pots as well. Maybe with soil, those pores actually get clogged. I don't really know what's going on. You can try to temporarily solve the issue by soaking it in vinegar or lemon juice or citric acid or whatever you find on the market. But that's not gonna solve the issue completely. It will just solve it temporarily. If it happened once, it will happen again. So you might already see that I have a hole at the bottom of this pot. It didn't used to be there. I drilled it, hence fixing the issue pretty much forever. The pot is functional once again. Maya bird, she's trying to balance on my keys. Come on, baby, let me show you what I'm doing. So what I did was I transformed this pot into a more conventional self-watering pot. I'm using a wick that I feed through this hole, which dips down into the reservoir. The rest of the wick sits at the bottom, and there we go. Even if the clay will get clogged, I will still have a self-watering pot because I have a wick. And I did actually film this procedure and how I obtained this, but I posted it on my second channel. I will link you to that video down below in the description and also somewhere on the screen. Do check it out if you want to see at length how I drilled the hole in. Well, it's just a hole, it's no big deal, but if you want to see the video, you have it in the description is what I'm saying. Hey, please don't eat my Maxillaria. P.S. Orchids are actually not toxic for pets, so she's safe. I cannot say the same thing about the Maxillaria though. Right, so I will be potting my Maxillaria in this pot. And if you were thinking, well, hold up, the roots will actually attach to the clay. Yes, they will. But this is the type of orchid which produces a lot of roots. Right now she's in active growth. So as long as you repot it when it's in active growth, when new roots are produced, even if you manage to destroy quite a few of the older roots, the orchid is going to be pretty okay. It's not a very fussy orchid. So with that said, I think it is time to unpot the orchid and save it from the cruel grasp of Maya's beak, which by the way is completely harmless. She does not have any power at all. She cannot even put a dent on this Maxillaria. So yeah, don't worry about the orchid. Maya is as harmless as a feather, really. Aren't you, little girl? Yeah, that's why mommy loves you, because you cannot bite me. All right, so I actually remembered now that this one is potted in a Repot Me mix. I think it's the Phalaenopsis potting mix, the one with more sphagnum moss that Repot Me has. It was a really good mix, but it could not quench the thirst of this orchid. And if you're thinking that I still haven't found my potting tray, you are correct. And if you're thinking that I lost the previous tray that I used with the mounted orchids, you'd be correct again. It's somewhere here. The greenhouse is starting to eat stuff. All right, so there is no way around it. I will damage a few roots, but it's okay. I'm gonna press a little bit on this pot just to loosen up the roots inside. And then I'm gonna try to pull up and see if it wants to come out of the pot. It may not because the bottom is full of roots. Let's see. Oh no, this is not coming out. So yeah, I'm going to have to try and sort out a little bit this mess here. And yep, a few roots will be damaged, but it's okay, it's full of roots. Now in a different video, I talked about actually damaging the roots rather than damaging the pot. Here's the thing. If you damage roots at the correct time when the orchid will not necessarily care about it because it has a whole lot of roots growing at the moment, then isn't it better to save the plastic pot rather than just put out waste in the world? For what? For some roots which are old and would have died anyway? And well, I cannot answer that for you. I can answer it for me. It's not worth it. It's not worth damaging this pot that I can reuse over and over again. Okay, things are moving along. Yeah, Joey Bird, I'm as impressed as you. Look at that root system. Even if I broke quite a few roots, there are still a ton of them in the pot. And the medium, I have to say, does not look very broken down. It actually looks pretty good. But I have a feeling it wasn't enough sphagnum moss. So I will remove as much of it as possible, the bulk of it at least, but some things, if they're too stuck, I'm gonna leave behind. I do, though, want to remove the sponge rock. Even though it's inorganic, it's not gonna break down, it's retaining way too much air around the root system that it's not really a good idea for me with this particular orchid. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove all of this old medium as much as possible, and I'll come back when I'm done. Alright, so I cleaned up the roots of my orchid. You can see that I removed quite a lot of them, I think more than half, but I'll tell you why. Most of them were very old roots, and whenever I deal with an orchid that has a lot of roots, for me it's quite tricky. I'm not excited to see orchids with a ton of roots that I need to repot because I know most of those roots are pretty old and are not going to make the transition into the new medium. And it has nothing to do with using a very different medium which the roots are not adapted to. It just has to do with the shock of getting repotted. It is what it is. Some orchids are very prone to losing a lot of roots. So most often than not, I end up with a very stinky pot after a month because most of the roots died. So what I actually do is remove most of the older roots on these types of orchids. Now with oncidiums, it's pretty easy. You go to the oldest growth and there you have the oldest roots. But with something like a Maxillaria tenuifolia, which has an upright growth, how do you detect the older roots? Simple. On the bottom, you have the oldest bulbs. On the top, you have the newest ones. And even though the roots travel in these sheaths all the way down, you can actually see that here you have the new roots, you have the tips, and right next to the oldest bulb, you have the oldest roots. So I left a few just to show you what I mean. Do you see this little clump of roots here, which definitely does not look alive? They're all coming from this bulb, which is one of the central bulbs of the orchid, one of the oldest ones. These are the roots that I want to remove completely. There is not even anything alive. And even if it is, I still remove them because these are the roots which are prone to just degrade in the medium a month or two after I repot. So I have a few more to remove. There we go. And this actually saves you a lot of time. When you have oh, look at this. This is not alive anymore, so I can completely remove it. So this actually saves you a lot of time, particularly when you would spend all day trying to figure out which root is alive, which is dead by pressing on them. Sometimes you just gotta go at the oldest growth and just cut. I know it sounds a little weird, but trust me, after so many years and so many orchids, you just don't have the patience to do this for 3 hours. And you also kind of have an eye for it. You know what you're looking for. You spot it a mile away. I can tell you this root is dead. There we go. So this comes with experience, and this is just a tip that I think is useful. If you don't feel comfortable with doing what I just told you, just don't do it, and you'll see in time how your orchids behave. Who knows, maybe you can find a different approach, one that suits you better. If you're at a loss with orchids that have massive root systems, when you repot them and then a month or two in, you find a pot full of dead roots, yeah, it's kind of normal. It happens a lot. This is my solution for it. You can try it out on one orchid, see how it works out for you. So with that said, let's clean off the table and repot the orchid in its new pot. Alright, so the way that I will arrange the wick inside the pot is a little bit twisty, just to have more contact with the medium. I only have one single drainage hole here, so the more wick I can have inside the pot, the better. And the first layer, of course, will be sphagnum moss. This will further help out the wick because moss is a wicking material as well. Then I'm gonna place the orchid, see about the level. I think we're pretty okay. And because I do still have quite a lot of roots, what I will do is make sure that in the root bowl I have some medium. So I'm gonna place sphagnum moss inside the root bowl like so. And I'm gonna place the orchid centered because it doesn't actually have a rambling growth pattern. It has an upright growth pattern. So centering it works out just fine. Then I'm gonna continue with bark. Excuse my reach, but things are not optimized just yet. So the typical thing that I do, bark and sphagnum moss layered inside the pot. Would you believe it? I have my slow release fertilizer near. I did not forget it. Not that I found my typical container. It's the big bag, but yeah, it's somewhere around here. I swear, the greenhouse is starting to swallow up stuff because I'm starting to lose things. And the top layer is, of course, bark. And there we have her. The orchid is all potted up and looking so pretty. I swear, every time I repot stressed orchids, even the fact that they are not in the same situation makes them look a little bit better. Although nothing actually changed just yet, but she will be much happier. I left some water in the reservoir here because this orchid is constantly thirsty, and I'm hoping that with this pot I can get away with a week of not watering. That would be great. Maybe 10 days, This is the type of orchid that can handle that, so here's hoping. And about the display, this orchid actually looks so good as it is right now. Just look at it. It's pleasing to look at. It absolutely passes as a houseplant now. I will actually make a video about it as a houseplant because it does not look like an orchid, and whenever it blooms, it's wonderful. If you don't know anything about this orchid, do check out the description. I will share with you a video in which I talk more about it. It is the famous coconut orchid because it actually smells like coconuts. Little side note here, not everybody will detect coconuts, but something else. I personally think it smells more like peaches. I don't know, that's just me, but it smells really beautiful and it looks gorgeous. I think everybody should have something like this. What was I saying? Oh yeah, display. So I can actually keep it like this, but I can also hang it. I have some macrame hangers, and if I so desire, I will just hang it from one of the curtain rods that I just installed in the greenhouse. Tour will come soon and I'll show you. Whatever I choose though, I need to keep this orchid in bright light. She absolutely enjoys bright light, blooms a lot better as well, and grows better. And with that said, I think we're pretty much done for today. Now, on Friday, I'm not sure if I'm gonna post, but I might post on Saturday, which is Halloween. And if you guys know me, you know that I do have a tradition of making Halloween specials. Maybe I can make a special this year as well. I have an idea. I don't know if it's gonna work out. Stay tuned for that. So with that said, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Hope you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope you have a great day today. Subscribe to my channel for more orchid videos, tutorials, experiments, updates, and other fun orchid subjects. If you wish to support the channel, do consider becoming a member or visit the merch store linked down below in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook. It's always nice to stay in touch there as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye!